Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And here is the text we're looking at. And yesterday, and to some extent also today, I was just sort of pondering on the fact the ancient words that we are actually reading today, and that we give them life. And there is just this wonderful expression that when we read the words of Rashi, his lips move in the grave. I think there's something beautiful about that metaphor, at any rate. So we're going on. Remember, Moses is being told now to write this poem and to teach it to the Israelites, so that God will have a witness against them when they, in fact, turn away from serving God and they encounter all these terrible, terrible consequences. And so the song itself will explain to them and the rationale for why these things are happening. And of course, essentially, this is reason number one that is given for the sad place that the Jewish people, the sufferings of the Jewish people, that it's because they are not loyal to God, and they are not loyal to making God their God through the practice of the mitzvot. It's certainly something for us to ponder as the world seems to be going in a different kind of direction, and the troubles that may, in fact, envelop the world. So that's reason number one. It's a very classic, repeated theme. There is a second reason, which is something introduced in the prophet Isaiah late on, which is the idea of a suffering servant. And that is where the Jewish people are, in fact, loyal to God and nevertheless face all these kinds of terrible things. And I actually sort of recently felt that possibly the reason for this is to teach the Jewish people a very great spiritual lesson about the nature of this life, that we should not look at this life that we are living in as being the be all and end all of all existence, and that the nature of this life actually is that of preparation. It's an idea that certainly would have been found in ancient Egyptian culture as well. Whether or not our culture is in some senses a combination of Babylonian culture, ancient Babylonian culture, and ancient Egyptian culture, and that in some senses they're fused together with, of course, the additional notion of being able to have at our assistance the idea of this ultimate divine creator, and that life turns out to be the way it is, so that we don't put too much emphasis on the physical benefits of this life, and that we rather find a spiritual way. And very recently, in reading commentary on the Midrash on the book of Ecclesiastes, which certainly emphasizes the point I've just been making. There's a wonderful interpretation of one of the verses that says, the crooked cannot be made straight, that is understood to mean that we should look at this life that we have as the weekday, and life in the world to come beyond our physical death, our physical demise as Shabbat. And just as you can't cook on Shabbat, you have to do all your preparation during the week. You have to do all your cooking during the week so that you can enjoy it on Shabbat. Likewise, whatever faults we have in this world, whatever sins we commit in this world, it's very, very important to try and get them worked out. And of course, that's what these holidays are all about trying to find and forgiveness. And of course, we have a lot of assistance in that regard. Yom Kippur comes to forgive, to provide us this atonement that we require, but to look at a lot of our adversity as an opportunity to ask ourselves, what is God trying to teach us here, and what do we need to change? And it's a point I've also made that when we encounter adverse situations in our relationships, at least we should be willing to ask ourselves the question, what am I contributing to this? What am I contributing to this adverse situation? It doesn't mean I'm completely responsible for it, but it does mean that I need to look seriously and see what I'm doing that's creating and provoking this situation. So just this whole idea and put together in terms of what we try to make out of this life. So, ki avi'enu el ha'adama, or when in this case I bring him, because I will be bringing him to this land, asher nishbati la'avotav, which I swore to their ancestors, zavat chalav udavash, flowing with milk and honey, clearly a metaphor. We've talked about that before. It's not the first time we're encountering this metaphor. V'achal, and he consumes, he eats, v'sava, and he's satisfied, v'dashen, and he grows fat. And I don't think that's necessarily a negative thing here, right? So in the past, in previous centuries, being fat was a sign of actually health, that you weren't starving. Ufana, and he will turn el Elohim acherim, to other gods, v'avadum, and serve them. So again, we need to move away from the idea of fetishism and understand other gods as being sources of salvation or happiness or whatever that people seek. We know money is a tremendous example of this, but there are other examples. The ni'atsuni, and they provoke me. The hefer et briti, and they nullify my covenant. The ni'atsuni, here's the Rashi. So provoke me. It's a word that's not that common. The hich'isuni. So Rashi gives us a synonym, and anger me. V'chein kol ni'utz lashon kas. And he says, anytime we come across this word na'atz, this word, we should understand that it has to do with provocation. V'haya, and it shall be, ki timtsena oto ra'ot rabot v'tzarot, that when these many terrible or awful, terrible times find him, right? When he encounters them, in other words, the nation. The anta hashira hazot lefanav la'ed. This song will answer him as a testimony. Ki lo tishachach mipi zaro, for it will not be forgotten from the mouth of his descendants. Ki adati, for I know, I understand, et yitzro, his inclination of these people, asher hu oseh hayom, which he does today, b'terem avi'enu, even before I bring him el haaretz, to the land, asher nishbati, of which I swore. So interestingly enough, although we are reading very severe kinds of things here, you'll see that there is actually a positive message here. This song will answer him before him as a testimony. Shehi treti bo, that I forewarned him, that tocha, in this song, in it, al kol hamatzaot ha'elu, on all these consequences. He lo tishachach et mipi zaro, for it will not be forgotten from the mouth of his offspring. Harei zo havtacha leIsrael. Indeed, this is a promise to Israel. She'ein Torah mishtakachat, that the Torah will not be forgotten. mizar am le'gamre, from their seed entirely. Some of it may be forgotten. Most of it may be forgotten. Most of it may be neglected, but at least not entirely. There will be some level. And of course, there are times when I'll ask the congregation if they've read this book or that book, and very few hands go up. So what's sort of sad is that the path we choose is one, if we choose to abandon our traditions, is one out of ignorance, that it's not, we haven't read it, and maybe that's a good thing. We haven't read it, found out what it said, and possibly been inspired by it, or alternatively, because there certainly are some people who read it and then say, this is not for me. I don't like it. I don't like what it says. I don't agree with it. I think it's a bunch of superstitious nonsense, etc. But the truth is, most people have never read the Bible. Fewer have not read the Torah, because if you come every week, at least, and a significant number of people at least do come to the synagogue on the Sabbath, although I would say at this point it's a vast minority, but that we're choosing paths out, a life path out of ignorance. So that's unfortunate. Vayichtov Moshe et hashira hazot bayom hahu. And Moses wrote this song on that day. By the way, this term shira, this poem, right, shira, is sometimes understood as referring to the entire Torah. But it is certainly on a pshat level, on a simple level, referring to and Rashi has said it, to the poem Hazinu, which is going to come up next week. That's the poem we're going to read next week. Yes.
I just, the thing about reading the Torah, which I have,
yes,
but it's risky.
Yes, it is.
Because, you're saying it's unfortunate to be ignorant, but it's counted against you less than if you've read it and don't do all the commandments.
So, yeah, I think you raise an interesting point, right? Okay. So the point, I think, first of all, they say, there's a statement somewhere in the Talmud that they say, the first thing they ask a Jewish person is, did you study? That's the first question. So you're right. Sinning out of ignorance would appear to be less, significant than sinning out of knowledge, right? Because there's a level of intentionality involved. But, there's also a level of intentionality of not studying. And you can study and have an open mind. You can say, I don't understand all of this, or I don't understand why it's saying this. And that means that I have to try and find a teacher. There's so much material that is actually simply in writing. There's so much material that's recorded. There are teachers of Torah all over the place, if you really want to understand it. But you're right, Lauren, I would not argue with you. I will tell you, for me personally, I was very, very fortunate. As I've told you, my mom read me Bible stories when I was very, very young. I then got this comic book of the Bible that actually did a really pretty good job of giving you a good sense of many of the, the scope of the Bible, and also, some of the words that are in there. And then after I was bar mitzvahed, I think it was maybe within a year after my bar mitzvah, I had already experienced reading A Tale of Two Cities, one chapter at a time, and getting through it, and then realizing I could do the same thing with the Bible. And because of the background that I already had, I was really curious. And I wound up starting to read the Bible, 5 chapters a day, and getting through it, and then realizing how little I understood. And then basically, even though I regret that I never had an opportunity to study at the yeshiva and really gain expertise at studying Gemara and those kinds of things, nevertheless, it's been very lovely, to the degree that I've, been able to find material at HUC. I was given some preparation for how to do this, and encounter this material. And even now, I mentioned reading the book of Ecclesiastes. ArtScroll has put out an incredible work regarding the traditional, interpretation of Ecclesiastes. And so it's in Hebrew and in English. The English, as you probably know, is heavily annotated, and I'm just thoroughly enjoying. It's like candy, reading the Hebrew with the commentary that they have, which I used to read this material just in the Hebrew, but having decided that I don't understand enough, then reading now the ArtScroll version with the English as well to try and make sure I have a better understanding of it. So the resources are there. But to be completely ignorant of it, I think is not an excuse. So yes, it's better than doing it and then rejecting it, but nevertheless, how do you get to it? How do you get to it? How do you reach it? We'll go on. But Lauren, please feel free. Just raise your hand or interrupt me, and I appreciate anyone's comments on this, because it's important that you react to it, right? Let's see. I don't think there's nothing until verse 23. Vayitzav et Yehoshua bin Nun, and he commanded Joshua son of Nun. Let's see. Did we? No, sorry. I don't think we did 22. Vayichtov Moshe et Shira hazot bayom hahu. Yep. Vayilamda et bnei Israel, and he taught it to the children of Israel. Let's see. So, yeah. Next, 23. Vayitzav et Yehoshua bin Nun, and he commanded Joshua son of Nun, Vayomer, and he said to him, Chazak ve'ematz, be strong and of good courage. Ki ata tavi et bnei Israel, for you will bring et bnei Israel, the children of Israel, el haaretz, to the land, asher nishbati lahem, which I swore to them. So clearly he's quoting God here. Va'anochi eheye imach, and I will be with you. So he's quoting to Joshua the words that God had said to him in a previous verse. And notice before, Moses, when he was talking to Joshua, said, Ata tavo, and here he says, Ata tavi. And just to remind you, the Rashi of that Moses was telling him he needed to be in constant consultation with the other leaders, and God had said, no, you have to be strong. You have to have the courage and the strength. Any comments, or should I go on? Okay.
I got my hand up.
Oh, so I thought I did, and then I saw it was down. Please go.
Whatever. Yes. I have he, capital H, and
Yes.
he charged Joshua. It's a different paragraph, actually.
Yes.
And so it refers to God, I would assume.
Yes. So yeah, it's interesting, right? Yeah. And in fact, I think that's the way you're going to see it would appear that is what is going on here. Thank you, Golda.
Okay.
Mine too.
No, thank you. And here, this is the point. Vayitzav et Yehoshua ben Nun. And thank you, because for me now, this is a better explanation. And up to this point, until you told me this, I didn't fully understand the point. And clearly, I gave you a bad translation or an inaccurate translation. So yes. So it's Musav Lamala. So this is the point that Rashi's making. Klapei Shechina. This is the point Rashi's making. He says this verse should be added to the verse above, Klapei Shechina, referring to the Shechina, referring to the the divine presence. Kamo shemefurash el haaretz asher nishbati lahem, as is explained where it says to the land which I have sworn to them, right? And that's why it says I swore to them, because it's referring to God. Do you happen to have handy the verse that it's referring to, by the way, up above? because I remember doing it, and I can scroll back and see if I
Oh,
can
it says
find it.
verse 16,
So let's just quickly go back to 16. Thank you, Lauren.
and that's in
Yeah, it's
the
here.
previous.
Yeah.
Here.
So back here. It's in the same Parsha.
Yeah, the previous Aliyah.
Yeah, right. Let's see, find it. Here it is. Okay. Yep. Right. Yeah, so here it is. Remember, he says right here, God says that both Joshua and Moses should present themselves in the tent of meeting. And then it says, V'atzavenu, I will command him. Okay, so command him here, just to make this clear, because I don't believe I fully understood it at that point. You can see I have to keep learning, just can't take it all in. But here it's referring to Joshua. I will command him.
22 seems almost superfluous or needs to be elsewhere.
Okay, well, let's just see. Okay, so here we got, this is verse 15 here. And here's 16, and it says, Vayomer Hamanai El Moshe. So this says, he says to Moses, right? And then he tells him, etc. Okay, and then it just keeps going. So that's one of the reasons why I was confused, right? So this is what God is saying to Moses, sorry, all this, right? Up until here. Keep going. Okay, all this. Okay.
And it could be right after 21 for that matter.
Yes, exactly. It goes all the way.
Like there's just an
right.
editing.
God is saying this to Moses. Yeah. Correct. Right. And then it says what Moses did. Okay. So 22 is sort of in the middle of it, and it's out of place, as you mentioned, Golda. But it's okay. There are reasons why these statements are put even out of place. It says, Ein mukdam umuchar b'Torah, right? So there's not necessarily, verses are not necessarily put in order. And now this Vayitzav et Yehoshua is going all the way back to there where the two of them are standing in the tent. And now I understand this for the first time in my life. Okay? I did not understand it until this moment. And that's what Rashi means here. That's what he means. And that's why he's saying, Atatavi, right? You will bring. Okay. So thank you so much, because this is really a great moment for you to share that and to let me know. Thank you so much. This is why, you learn Torah bechavruta. Vahi, I think I've got everything there. Yes. Okay. On to the next verse. Vahi kichalot Moshe lichtov et divrei haTorah hazot al sefer, and when Moses completed writing the words of this Torah on a scroll, ad tumam, until they were completed. Okay, so no Rashi on that until 26 now. Should we stop here, or do you have comments you'd like to make? We got about 4 minutes. I'm not hearing comments.
No.
Okay, I can continue. So, Vaitzav Moshe et Haleviim, and Moses commanded the Levites, Nosei Aaron Brit Adonai Lemor, who carried the ark of the covenant of Hashem, saying with these words. Okay, let's see. Lakoach et Sefer HaTorah Hazeh. Now we've got Sefer HaTorah. Take this scroll of the Torah, V'samtem oto, and place it, mitzad Aaron Brit Hashem Elokechem, and place it on the side of the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God. V'hayasham b'cha la'ed, and there it should be for you as a testimony. So here we go. Lakoach. So Rashi's commenting on the grammatical form of lakoach, and it's an imperative. Kamo zachor. In other words, here, zachor, lakoach, shamor, haloch. Do you hear how it sounds, right? So remember, guard, go. They're all imperatives. That's the point he's making. Mitzad Aaron Brit Hashem, on the side of the ark of the covenant of the Lord. Nechlaku bo chachmei Yisrael. So the sages of Israel had a dispute over what exactly this meant. But Baba Batra, in the tractate Baba Batra in the Talmud, Yesh mehem omrim daf haya bolet min ha'aron. There was some who said that the side meant that there was a board sticking out from the ark, mibachutz, on the outside. Vesham haya munach, and there it was placed. VaYesh omrim, and there are those who said mitzad haluchot, that this was placed on the side of the Ten Commandments, right? The tablets. Haya, it was. Sorry.
Rabbi,
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry. Did you finish that sentence? I
No,
didn't mean.
I didn't. I just need to finish.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm almost done. Just 3 more words.
Okay, yeah.
Munach betach haron,
Sorry.
placed within the ark. Okay, good. Go ahead, Lauren.
I just need to go back to lakoach because mine says something different.
Oh, okay.
It says it's employing pa'ol,
Yes.
denoting ongoing fulfillment. It doesn't say command, it says ongoing fulfillment. And it says similar to zachor, shamor, haloch. It says literally going, which means constantly, where it means constantly diminished. In the expression hayu haloch v'chasor and haloch v'nasoa, continually traveling.
Okay, so thank you. We had the comment like this before, and they introduced Safaria in its translation, introduced a word, a grammatical term that I was unfamiliar with, but I think it's important. I'm going to mark that in here for future because of my short-term memory loss. Okay, so connotes ongoing action. But it's still an imperative. It's an ongoing imperative is what it is. But thank you. I think it's very important to know that it's ongoing. Yes.
So when you use the infinitive form as an imperative, is that just a more polite and less kind of commanding form to say least for instead of zachor? And then there's also tiskor.
Yes, tiskor means right, which generally is that would be.
I mean, I've heard all three of those as imperatives.
Yes. So yeah, I have right. Usually tishmor comes after something else. Yeah. So zachor, look, okay. Zachor, shmor is the imperative. But when you put that patach, right, or let's see, I'm sorry, the kamatz in front of, so it would just be kach. The normal imperative would be kach, take. The root of the word kach is lakach, but the lamed can drop off, under certain circumstances, as it does in the imperative form of kach. So why it's lakoach, which sometimes is used to imply the infinitive. Okay.
Well, yeah, my point wasn't about that specific word, but that the infinitive lamed or the u form with the taf,
yes,
or having neither the lamed nor the taf, all of them are versions of infinitives, and I was wondering why what the difference in those three were.
So so tikach, is generally meant as the future tense, but I'm trying. Okay, so in other words,
take.
Yeah, in the sense that you shall, we would do. The shall, of course, implies an imperative. So I think it's. I'm sorry, I just blocked on the grammatical term. So the imperfect, right? Imperfect means uncompleted action. So tishlach implies uncompleted action. But they are interesting various forms, and I guess context would dictate what the implications are. And we probably should stop here. But thank you, Lauren. I appreciate again. You guys have taught me a lot this morning. So,
and we do have enough for a Kaddish.
Okay, then give me a moment and I will get that in. I just want to mark the place if I may. So here we go. Okay, I'll stop the share and stop the recording.